Hey, welcome to Bigfoot Society Live. We have an awesome show for you all tonight. Wow, we got people ready and raring to go. They are wanting to see Les Odell from West Virginia, Cryptids and Strange Encounters. This is going to be a fun show. If someone could let me know in the chat if they can hear me and if we are sounding good before we get chugging along. We got a few people in the chat here. We got Mystery Scholar saying "Woo, what's up? What's up?" We got Mothman 46. Let's go! All right. Yeah, someone just if you would be so kind as to chat and let me know that we are sounding good. And again, a reminder that mackerel, we are having people chat now. Okay, Tate Hieronymus says I can hear you. Greg from all.the.weird says, hey bud. Mothman 46 says you sound 1,000%. Tate Hieronymus, but you sound terrible. Wink, I'll never tell. Gabriel Ringenberg, sorry if I mispronounced your name, friend. Good evening. I hear you good. Well, hey, that's good. I say we're good to go. But super excited for all of you to be in the chat. And again, if you have questions for Les as we go along, please definitely put those in and make sure you put the word question in big caps so I can see it. And I will sprinkle those in as we go along. But also, before we go any further, I have the privilege of, we'll say, next week, I have Mr. Robert Leiderman from the Bluff Creek Project on the interview seat. So we'll be talking about the Patterson Gimlin film site and all that good stuff. Be a good time. But yeah, let's go ahead and bring Mr. Les Odell. Before I do, make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up button. And share this in any groups that you're in on Facebook, on Twitter. Let's get the word out about Les tonight. Greg says, question, why are you so awesome, Jeremiah? I know it. People want to know. I want to know. But Greg, I appreciate you. So let's go ahead and let's bring Mr. Les Odell from West Virginia Cryptids and Strange Encounters on. Les, hello. How's it going, friend?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. Again, we've got people live in the chat, and there'll be people listening to this later on YouTube and also on the podcast as well, all over the world, which is very cool. Let's do a quick little intro for people that haven't heard about you. Les, you are in the great state of West Virginia, and you are a man of many different things. You are a cryptid, I would say, a cryptid researcher. You're a paranormal investigator. You're a historical researcher. You're going deep into the archives to find stuff. You're now a published author. West Virginia Cryptids. We'll talk about this later, but friends, if you haven't gotten a copy of Les's book, it is very cool with illustrations by Mark A. Randall. We got a few friends that I want to point out. We got Greg says, hey, Les.
Hey, Greg.
And Gabriel says, Les, with exclamation points. Good stuff.
Hey, Gabe.
Yeah, good stuff. So, for real quick, Les, is there anything else that you would want to put into that summary about yourself that you want people to know that's important before we get into the interview? Anything else?
No, not really. I mean, you did a great job.
Cool. Let me get things. Here we go. Also, so let's get into this. Someone's never heard of West Virginia Cryptids and Strange Encounters. What is that? I want to know, what is this organization?
Well, it's not really an organization. It's basically other than my oldest son and a friend of mine every once in a while. It's basically a solo thing with me. It started. I think it's going on 4 or 5 years now.
Okay.
I done paranormal investigating for quite a while. My oldest son and I did, and we had a group, and that group kind of disbanded. Just like a lot of groups have. And we were discussing the topic of Bigfoot and stuff like that, and we're like, and come up with the idea, started a page for West Virginia
Mm,
for or to where folks can come share their encounters, whether it didn't have to be Bigfoot, but whether it's Bigfoot, UFO encounters, ghost
awesome.
stories, and um, it started out as that, just a place for people to come and share their stories with other like-minded people, um, or if they didn't want to share it, I you know gave them the opportunity, or how you want to say it. I was there for them to talk to.
That's awesome.
I mean, there's been many times where something didn't even get onto the Facebook page where I've sat and just talked, on either through Messenger, emails, on the phone, things like that. Just talk to people that needed somebody to talk to share their stories, and then that it kind of grew, and I didn't expect it to really to go as far as it did. I was expecting a few hundred people maybe, and next thing I know, after like a few months, it started growing. I think we're up to 17,000, pushing
It's a
18,000 people.
big page. Like, I looked at it today and I was like, "Oh, wow, that's actually, like, a real deal." Like, it's huge. 15, 17K easy. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, hats off, man.
So then, as it started to grow, my wife was like, "Well, you needed to, you know." She definitely supports everything I do.
Nice.
She goes, "Well, because people started contacting me, like you, to either be on a podcast or be, you know, speak a little speaking event." And so I started doing that every so often, and then people wanted me to come out and check things out. So I started going to locations and checking out, even if it wasn't something that's extremely recent, I would go to those locations, or just go to an area where several encounters or experiences people may have had, in one area, and I would go and just hang out and look around, and basically put my information out there, what I found or didn't find.
That's awesome. And a question for you. Did did the love for well, I guess a few. So, did the love for paranormal, ghosts come first, or was it kind of at the same time, uh, as cryptids, or which came first, or did they both come at the same time?
No, I was always into the paranormal stuff, the ghost stuff, because of
Okay,
things, experiences I had. But I mean, the the cryptids and monsters, whatever you want to call them, was always on that back burner. As a kid,
mm.
you heard the stories. I was always fascinated with the Loch Ness monster.
Oh, okay.
I knew of the Patterson Gimlin film, but it wasn't something that I delved into deeply. And then when I started doing this with the page, I kind of got into it a little bit deeper.
Very nice, very nice. How has it been? I'm just curious, as a father myself, how's it been, with bringing your kids into investigations like that? What kind of, has you had any interesting observations from that? Or
Um, yeah, they my oldest son really likes it. As when he was younger, he was really into it. We did a lot together.
sure.
Two middle boys, they like to go on the adventures. At times,
Hmm.
uh, they have that a little bit of an interest, but I now my 5-year-old is like all into it. He's
Yeah, awesome.
everything's Bigfoot. He just was recently at a doctor for his checkup, and he's telling the nurse, he said, "Yeah, my dad's a Bigfoot investigator, or Bigfoot this," and he's
Sweet.
uh, and I've even asked him, how do you know Bigfoot exists? And he does this little checklist. He'll say tracks checklist, photos checklist, Patterson Gimmon film checklist, So,
Nice, nice.
yeah, he's really into it. Actually, right now, what he's doing with his mom is watching the Ghostbusters movies, the 1984
Oh,
Ghostbusters.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, dude. Getting
yeah,
ready for the new one.
yeah.
All that. Yeah, that's cool, dude. I love that. Very cool. Very cool. Oh, I want to point out that you have a very cool YouTube channel as well. You have some cool stuff on there. So it's under the name it's WV Cryptids and
Mm,
Strange Encounters, right?
yeah, yeah.
But you have some really interesting videos on there. It's cool. You go all over the place. I mean, you've got Bigfoot. You're going on Bigfoot hikes.
Mhm.
Um, the one I really liked though is you're looking for these giants
Yeah.
in West Virginia. That
Mhm.
is cool, dude. And like you gotta go watch that one because you really get into it. So like remind me, well, do you mind sharing the story about so there was a group of giants that were buried in the West Virginia hills, or what exactly was happening there?
Well, there's been a lot of stories about giants all over West Virginia. You know, like Wheeling, Moundsville, but right here in the county where I live, I found actually I'll show you the book. It's this is a Marion County history book,
Okay.
and it talks about giant skeletons being found
Oh wow.
in the Reesville area, and then you read into a little deeper, and it talks about some being found in Palatine area, and near the White Day Creek area. And then I started reading into it a little bit more. I wanted because it sparked my interest, and I learned and through that I learned about that there were supposedly mounds along the Monongahela River through that area. Uh, there were there was a road that they called them that supposedly was there also that was named the Macadam Road.
Okay.
It's a road that was said to be 9 feet wide and 14 inches thick, and it was built.
Wow.
It was made from crushed mussel shells and stone. Well, all these giants were found along that road. Hey, Mark, there's Mark Randall
Hey,
there.
we got the illustrator in the chat,
Yeah,
Mark Randall from West Virginia Cryptids. What's up, buddy?
and so I wanted to look into the ones that were found in Reesville because I I lived really close to Reesville, and Reesville's
Okay.
always been a place that I was familiar with. And supposedly these there was two or three, I'm trying to remember which now, found during a excavation
Mm,
of for a footer for a bridge across the Paw Paw Creek, and then they were examined by Dr. Zedekiah Kidwell, and then said they were reburied in the cemetery by the name of Jolliffe Cemetery.
that's it, Jolliffe. Yeah.
Well, the
Yeah.
Jolliffes is a prominent name in that area. It was along with the Pricketts, which there's a famous fort right in our area. It's called Prickett's Fort. So I knew there were, you know, could have been stones around or graveyards that had that name, but not a there was not a specific Jolliffe Cemetery that I could find. I went to the ancestry department at the local library.
Okay.
There there's no Jolliffe Cemetery on record, and well, even the book puts it in parentheses in the book.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Hmm.
So I did track one down in another county, which is about 45 to 46 miles away, and I went to that cemetery. It has the right time frame, you know, with the stones and you know that suppose these giants were found in. But I just didn't feel, you know, the mid 1800s or whatever when they were supposedly found. That was just seemed like a long way to take them, you know, especially when the bones were supposed to be deteriorating. You know,
Oh,
that's why they
sure.
wanted to
Yeah.
rebury them. They were deteriorating quickly, so I didn't feel that that was the right place. Uh, then I started looking into maps of the area,
Hmm.
and I come across a map that showed a land plot that said J. Jolliffe. So I decided, hey, I'm going to see if I mean, I knew where, you know, the map's still basically the same. The roads, everything are basically still the same from that map. And that map was like, was 1886. It's on it. It's on,
Nice.
and, uh, and so that maps or all the roads that was on that map and everything are still there. So I tracked down
Okay.
that land plot, walked up to this guy's house, you know, knocked on his door. He come out and he's talking to me, and I said, "Hey, you know, this is what I'm doing. Have you ever heard of it?" And he told me no, he's never heard of the giant story. And I said, well, I'm looking for a cemetery it's on Jolliffe Land, and by an old map, this used to be Jolliffe Land. He said, well, it's still Jolliffe Land. He said, I'm a descendant of Jolliffs. Some Jolliffs still live on the other part of it. And I was like, well, do you know if there's a cemetery, a family cemetery? And he's like, no, there's no family cemetery. But he says there is the mound. And
Yeah, that part was like, I was like, oh man, here we go.
I'm standing there on his
Yep.
back porch, and I'm not paying. I'm just like, because I'm looking at this little bank, this.
Yep.
And he said, this is a burial mound.
That's
And
crazy.
we walked all the way around it. He showed me the whole mound, and I I got satellite view of it and whatnot. And he told me that because I think he was like 70 or 71, and he
Okay.
told me even as a kid, nobody was allowed on the mound.
Wow.
They had cattle that was there. They would have a fence around it that even cattle couldn't go on the mound. So I talked to him for a little while, and as I was leaving, he said he stopped me. He goes, "Hey," he said, there's no cemetery here, but there is one on the other side of the creek up on the hill."
Mm.
So I went to that cemetery, and I was a little disappointed at first because it was a lot of newer, modern, stones. And then I noticed a huge cedar tree in the back corner, and beside it there's this like dead stub or stump, just like 10, 12 feet tall, just huge. And I was like, well, I always knew through research and stuff that, or I don't know why, but it always seemed to be common that older cemeteries had like these large cedar trees, in them. So I started walking back toward the cedar tree, and I got closer, and I noticed the stone started to get older, and it had a little dip
Yeah.
that went over, and I started seeing the name Jolliffe, 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 and then there was a couple that had there was even some that had wood planks that just sticking out of the
Oh
ground.
man, that's old. Yeah.
So if you go to that stump, you can stand and you look straight out from that stump, and you look right at the mound. So I thought that was
Mm.
pretty cool. I was like, well, maybe
That is cool.
maybe that's where they're at. This could be a possibility.
So cool. So cool. And that's
So
just one of the stories that you have on your channel, man.
yeah,
Like it's good stuff.
so I decided to dig into a little bit more as far as like the people that were involved. I found the squire that recommended they be reburied. I found where he's buried at. I found the Dr. Kidwell. I know where he's buried at. I found his stone or his grave. Then I decided, you know, dig into him a little deeper. See,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm looking through his bio. He ended up being like a senator or something like that in
Oh
West
wow.
Virginia also. And but one of the last paragraphs, I think it may be the last paragraph in that bio I was reading, it says he was a prominent member of the MP Church.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason that stuck out to me. It was familiar. I couldn't place it at first, and then I remember the map. I need to look at the map, and I I got the map back out or pulled it up on my computer, and where the mound, there's the mound behind that guy's house. The graveyard's on the other side. Right in between them is a church, and on that map it's called the MP Church. So the doctors, that was the doctor. My under, what I feel is that was the doctor's church. So
Oh man.
with those coming together, and then you read into them a little bit more of the literature and research, and it starts talking about where the macadam road ends and comes to. Well, if you read into some of the clues, it ends right in that same area where the a creek coming off the Mon River is called. It's just called a little creek. So a bunch of stuff started fitting that maybe I feel that maybe those giants are in that cemetery.
Oh, that's cool.
If they
Yeah.
did exist, is that's I will say that.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you for sharing that story. We've got, I want to run through a few questions here that we've had pop up in the chat here. So, my buddy Greg says, hey, Les, has there been a time when someone's tried to hoax you? And we
Um,
don't have to go throwing names out, but it's, and just a general thing. But
um, yeah, I mean, I guess you could say hoax. I mean, not really too much when it comes to the Bigfoot subject. I mean, there's
okay.
been one that but I picked up on it pretty quickly
Oh
as
yeah.
far as that. But yeah, and when you interview somebody, I mean, I'm not a trained interviewer at all. I just learned from my experiences when I do talk to people
Sure.
to pick up on some nuances that, hey, yeah, you're BSing me. I can tell it just by
Right, right,
the way they
exactly. Yeah.
act, their mannerisms,
Yep.
you know, one of them's like if they don't want to make eye contact,
That's
it's
a
usually
huge one. Yeah.
crossing their arms. A lot of times is usually either something uncomfortable, and it usually probably because they're fibbing. Um, but I also, as far as like Bigfoot related stuff, I carry these little 4x4 pictures that many people have seen online. They're just artist representations of
Okay.
Bigfoot faces that has been done, CG have been done, or
Oh
right,
yeah, yeah. I know exactly
yeah.
what you're talking about. Yep.
So I carry like 20 of those with me,
Oh wow, that's a good idea.
and when I talk to somebody that's had an experience, that's one of the things I do. I don't only just I don't only use them for uh, per se, like a lineup per se.
Mm-hmm.
I do that too. Instead of me trying to, in my mind, try to figure out what these folks you're describing, I have them, either pick a certain feature or one that looks
Nice.
familiar, and that way I can visually see what they're talking about. But I also use it as kind of as a tell. Um, if
Mm.
if I'm talking to somebody and I want them to pick the picture out, usually if somebody has an experience, you can, if you flip one out there that looks like what they saw,
Yeah.
they're going to have a reaction.
Like visceral reaction that
They're,
you
yeah,
couldn't fake. Yeah.
but
Totally.
if you sometimes you have those folks that you can just tell, I already have a suspicion they might be
Yep.
fibbing a little bit, and they'll be like, oh yeah, nonchalantly, oh it's that one right there, man.
Oh yeah.
So that's
No,
kind of what
no
I
good.
use those for.
No good. Hey, that's a great takeaway. I think more people should do that. That's a good idea, man. My friend Tate Hieronymus has an interesting question. Um, so out of the tracks from the PG site, Patterson Gimlin site from 1967, which is Les's favorite? The perfect ones casted by Roger, or my personal fave, the mid tarsal break track by Titmus. I'll 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 reword it to a little. Do you have any thoughts about those tracks, or either of them more of a favorite? Tate is like into the PG film because
Yeah,
Bluff Creek Project, but I'm
right.
interested to hear your thoughts on it.
Um, I mean, if I remember right, there was several. I mean, several tracks found at at the PG site, if I'm correct, and some of them, and I think Roger Patterson, if I'm not correct, he may be able to correct me here. He only casted like the best ones, and I think it John Green that went back and casted several other ones that were not so great, and it left to right and stuff. So it, I mean, the mid tarsal break, I I I I know that that's a thing, I guess. Um, but I don't know, when you look at Patty when she's walking, it just doesn't seem like there's that. It's like a flat sole. It doesn't seem like it
Yeah,
has that.
exactly. Exactly. And the crazy thing, I don't know if I brought this up a few weeks ago, but I don't know. Do you watch the Sasquatch Archives channel?
No, I do not.
Oh, you should. So it's a guy, Todd Prescott, who puts up all this historical Bigfoot footage
Hmm.
from way back in the day, and he actually put up the BBC PG film site uh, documentary that was only shown once in '68, and there's actually shots of the trackway from the PG film. It's pretty cool. It's a brand new thing, but um, that's a different show. We're focusing on West Virginia. So how about this? Kind of random question. Do you think do you think the Pacific Northwest or West Virginia is more of the cryptid town USA? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it depends on which cryptid. I mean,
Yeah, it's
you know,
true. That's
is
true.
I'm not familiar with much. in the Pacific Northwest, except for Bigfoot, Sasquatch. But we have several supposed cryptids here in West Virginia. That's maybe not be as well known as some like Mothman or the Flatwoods Monster or anything like that.
And why do you think it is that like so many cryptids are in this one state? Like it's just wild. I mean, you could make a few of these books about it's just it's got to be like the folklore in the
Yeah,
state. I don't know if you have thoughts about that.
yeah, that's what I've always had the feeling too. Is folklore and stories past and stories expand and you know you know like just for example, we have the one that everybody calls the sheep squatch.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's. But I've got on good faith that of somebody that knows a good bit about that lives in the area that lived in the area where that was supposedly first seen, and it was kind of debunked years ago, but it's
Okay.
still caught track. It was kind of debunked years ago. It was a a large ram sheep that had went
That's so crazy.
feral, and its fur was all matted and this and that, and I guess there was, by what this fella says, there was actually, alcohol involved in the whole story that started it. And so I guess it kind of blew up. And then you have the stories or the lore about the West Virginia white things, which are just about anything that you can imagine that shows up as white creatures, like large white dogs,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
things like that.
Do, excuse me. Do you have a favorite cryptid of West Virginia?
Um, yeah, I mean, I like the Vegetable Man. I mean, I guess you call it
Oh,
a cryptid.
okay. Yeah.
I mean, because that's Reesville also. That's the same place where the Giants are found. It's
Oh,
right down there.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Um, I mean, it's only one story from one individual, pretty much. But I guess because it's a local thing where I grew up, it's I got a special spot for it a little bit.
Oh yeah, it's always the local cryptid is what gets you. I mean, for me, it's the Van Meter visitor that I'm legally obligated to talk about in every episode. Not really, but that's my hometown cryptid in West Des Moines, Van Meter, Iowa. So my friend Mothman 46, we're both friends with him. He actually let's say his random comment is West Virginia mountain goats. Is that a thing? Is there mountain goats in West Virginia, or is that a reference I don't get? Probably.
I mean, I don't know if he's talking about like the Powell Mountain goat. That was a white goat that ran around the mountains down there for
Oh,
quite a while.
okay.
Um, I'm not sure if that's what he's talking about.
He's got some interesting questions for you though. So, has Les ever gotten any reports of an abnormally large rabbit around Dolly Sods?
No, no, I have not.
Okay, you may want to chat with Mothman 46. I'm not going to share the story because I don't have the okay to, but talk to him about that.
Okay.
Also, have you ever investigated the Black Panther sightings in Franklin, West Virginia? Or are you familiar with those?
Yeah, well, Franklin's just one spot. I mean,
Oh,
there's been basically about every county in the state has had a story with Black Panthers or mountain lions. But
mm,
the Franklin area, uh, that around that area and around below the Summersville area in Nicholas County has quite a few sightings.
interesting, interesting. So there's definitely something going on there. Um, my friend Jonathan Dodd says he asked, "Do you have a favorite?" And I need to make sure he asks this question every show because it's a good question. Um, what is your favorite Bigfoot encounter story? Do you have one that you always enjoy hearing or finding out more about?
From here or
That's where it's up to you. Yeah.
um, I mean, there's several here in West Virginia, but
Okay.
one of them that has always been my favorite is there's a lake in the southern part of the state called Bluestone Lake,
Hmm.
and I talked to this guy and his dad, and they both told me well, his dad told me something separate that happened, around the lake as well. But this fella told me that him and his buddy were fishing on the lake. They were on the lake at night, and they were bass fishing. He said, yeah, a lot of people don't believe you bass fish at night, but he said, yeah, we put lights or shine in the water. We bass fish. And he said, we were on the boat, and he said we always have some kind of you know weapon with us, And he said
Okay, sure.
I had something in the boat, and he said I started hearing what sound they thought was bait fish. When larger fish move, you'll hear lot of the little shad or minnows or whatnot, shiners will come to the top and they'll leap out of the water. And he said we thought that was what we were hearing, and then they started hearing like these grunt noises,
Mm,
and so then he's like, well, maybe it's deer, maybe a deer in the water. So he had a light, he pulled the light up, and he could see eyes shine. And he said it was kind of odd because the way they were spaced and the way they were looked like they were more forward pointing than what deer were. So it was an adjustable light. He kicked it up, to a higher candle power, and that's when he noticed that there was two of these things in the water.
wow.
One was smaller, and when he kicked that light up, the larger one, he said, acted like, hey, I'm pissed that you can see me, and it screamed, started hitting the water.
Oh, man.
The smaller one turned and went back to the bank, walked up the bank of I don't know how far. He said just a few feet or so, and basically looked like he's trying to pretend it was a stump. It
Wow.
squat down and like turned its back, put its head down, and
Oh, man.
he's like, in this, he said the other one's just going nuts in the water. So they started. All they had was a trolling motor or a small motor or whatnot. He said it wasn't very big. They couldn't go very fast. So they decided they were going to get out of there. So they come out and they're not too far off the bank, and they're just traveling up along the bank, and stuff started coming flying out of the woods or out of the tree line,
Wow.
hitting the water like logs and rocks
Oh,
and whatnot.
man.
And then he said, "You need to talk to my dad." And I talked to him, and he talked about seeing something down that area, and said that he thought he found what looked like something had been making nests, just like not like we see out in the Pacific Northwest, but like
Okay.
almost it could have been bear beds, where the grass is all.
Sure,
But he
sure.
was thinking they were like nests,
Wow.
and I asked him to take me there, and I they said, well, the only way we can get there is by boat, and
Oh,
I think
man.
so. I never went anywhere. So, but it was an interesting story that I really enjoyed hearing.
That is a really good story. That's a solid Bigfoot story. I love that. Thank you. Um, Tate has asked an interesting question. What's Les's driving force into researching cryptids and the paranormal? What drives you? Why do you
People,
do it?
people,
Okay.
helping people, talking to people. It's not it. I mean, a lot of folks are out there trying to prove or disprove.
Mm,
Um, I I can't say that I am. I mean, I like to find things if I do, and like to point out things that they're not, that it may not be. But my to me the most important thing is giving that individual that may have had that experience somebody to talk to, and
I love that.
you
Yep.
know con, you know
Yep.
console them if I have to.
That's awesome because yeah, I mean, you really can't say it any better than that. I totally agree with that. The way I look at it is right now, this is a hard time, and a lot of people are struggling with a lot of stuff up here.
Hmm.
And if content I make is what helps someone keep going,
Right,
then I will make that content until the day I can't do it and I'm like 90. You know what I mean? Like that to
right.
me is worth it. So that's how I look at it. But let's look at Gabriel says comment, Gabe. Les, thank you again for having us at the expo. Cool.
Yeah, yeah. Gabe's my buddy. He has his own little. He's a young man that has a little business that he does cool little.
Is he the woodworking guy?
Yes, he's a little
The wood
woodworker.
burning guy, right?
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
heard of this dude.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. You've got some good stuff, Gabe. I've seen your stuff on Instagram. Good show. What's the name of his?
Uh,
Gabe, put the name of your thing in the comments if you
Woodin, West Virginia.
would in West Virginia.
Yeah,
Everyone, check it out. Let's talk about West Virginia cryptids. Oh, there it is,
yeah,
Mothman.
there it is. That's what he
That's
does.
solid.
Right there.
There you go, Gabe. West Virginia cryptids. So why make this book? Walk me through why we made this book. You and Mark.
Because Mark wanted to do.
Mark was like, "Give me something to do." That's
No,
awesome.
I had never thought about doing it myself.
Okay.
Then one day Mark just messaged me and said, "Hey," he said, I would like to do a project with you." And I'm like, "Okay, well, what kind? What kind?" And he said, "I'd like to like pick, you know, cryptids from West Virginia. I'd do the artwork. You write the book." And
Nice.
I'm like, "Oh, but I'm not a writer. I mean,
I don't know, dude. It seemed like you are to me.
well,
Yeah.
I got a lot of. I think grammarly has a lot to do with that. So it
Yep.
helped me out a good bit."
That's all right.
So he sent me some renderings he had done with some cryptids, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "Yeah, this is cool. We'll do that." And I done all the research that I could. The hardest part of the book was taking page and page of research and condensing it down to fit that
Yeah.
format of
Yep.
250 to 300 words. But yeah, it's been a good. I mean, it took us a little time to do as far as getting what format we decided we wanted. Because we went back and forth. I don't have them here, but I have one that's you know these 11 by 17 or whatever. I
Oh
have one
yeah.
that's that size, um, and I have the hardbacks that we can get.
Nice.
Um, just a fun project to do. Just something, and my wife, and again, my wife was very supportive, and I can't
There
say
you
she
go.
pushed me into it, but she encouraged me to do it.
And
So,
that is huge. A spouse or a partner that is behind you is huge in this game. I don't want to. I think half the fun of this book is not knowing what's inside it and like not having seen the illustrations or like what particular cryptids are in here.
mhm.
But there is one that I found very interesting that I wanted to get your thoughts on because let me find it here. The thing is that it's very unique to this
Mhm.
book. Um, Jeez, you know which one I'm talking about. It's called the Polk.
Polk
Uh,
monster.
yeah, the Polk Gap Monster. I can't find it now,
Yeah.
but tell me. So I've never, and maybe this is my lack of knowledge about West Virginia cryptids, but is this something that you like researched and found yourself, or like is this in other? Like it seemed very niche to me. This
Uh,
Polk Gap Monster.
it's a regional. It's like a
Okay.
regional thing. We Mark and I wanted to do Bigfoot,
Mm,
for sure. And then I was like, I really would like to do a more regional,
yeah.
like something like the Momo, Missouri Monster
Yep.
or whatnot like that. Because even like where I grew up in my little town, there was stories passed around that there was a Bigfoot creature in the 70s, and they called it the Grant Town Goon. But
That's nice.
there was just not a whole lot of substance there for a story on it. So I decided, because I found the Polk Gap Monster a few years ago
Okay.
just by researching, and there's a fella in that area. His name is Dave. He's got a nickname. They call him Bug, but his name's Dave Bug Stovers.
Nice.
He's actually a West Virginia delegate, um, but he supposedly has collected several accounts from like the Mabon area, and down in that area where this all took place, the Twin Falls area, and tells these every year in like these little like get-togethers who have like a campfire thing. He tells these stories.
Oh, that's cool.
So I wanted to pick that one because he has put that one forth for West Virginia in his area, or for his area. So I wanted to use that one in the book to broaden it for West Virginia, because I mean others, like I said, other states have, their
Right.
Bigfoot creature. So yeah, that's why I used it.
So I want to definitely point that out. So this isn't just a book where it's like you're gonna have. It's not just the normal West Virginia cryptids that you've heard of everywhere.
Mhm.
Like there is this Polk Gap. This might be one of the only resources that you can hear about this cryptid in this book, which I think is very cool. And you gotta see the illustrations. So pretty much, I'm saying pick up the book on Amazon is the best way to get it. Right? That's
Yeah,
how I got it. But
yeah,
or if you see Les at a expo or a conference or something like that, he'll probably have some with him, I
yeah.
would
I have to
guess. But
I have to order some. I'm completely
yeah.
out. I've sold all of them out, so I didn't expect to do that, but I have.
Our friend Gabe had an interesting question. Les, do you have a favorite STM documentary?
Um, I really like the Flatwoods Monster Legacy of
Mm,
Fear. I
okay.
really like that one because it actually because I like the Flatwoods Monster story, and it is one of the only places that they because they two of the original witnesses were in the movie. The May brothers were in the movie.
Oh yeah, sure.
That's one of the only places you will find the straight up legit story of what they experienced. I mean,
Mm.
because if you do researches online or any YouTube videos, it's the same thing as it. Somebody started something, then they just regurgitate it, and there's a lot of misconceptions and wrong parts to it. Like for instance, there I've read where all the witnesses of that night had died of strange, like cancer related and this and
Oh
whatnot,
wow.
like not too long after. Well, Kathleen May like died when she was like I think 90. She was in her 90s, 90,
Mm.
91. Both the May brothers are still alive. Uh, and there's other ones where there's other places where they talk about the dog that was with them that had, it at a day or so later it died. The May brothers, Freddie May will tell you, no, that dog was with us for many years after.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah, I mean, I've talked to Andrew from that museum. The nicest guy, and
Mhm.
it's such a fun story too. But you've been in a few STM films yourself, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that you've been in.
Couple.
You're in Dark Skies,
Hmm.
correct?
Hmm.
Which is one of the On the Trail of UFOs,
Right.
and then you have if um, if you haven't seen Mothman Legacy,
Yeah.
you have a I would say a pretty substantial part in that, um, which is a fascinating story um, where you actually saw what you believe to be Mothman. Do you mind sharing that story or?
I don't know. I don't really say it was Mothman.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Sorry.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, Seth wanted the account or wanted me to tell my story because of oh, now I'm drawing a blank on the name, but there in Mothman, the Point Pleasant one, there was a fellow in there that had a sighting
Mm,
or had an experience in his room that he was calling it. He called it a demon or whatnot or something like that in that
sure.
movie, and he said it was kind of he felt that was similar to what the both stories were similar, and but what happened is several years ago, when my mom ended up down with cancer. She had
Yeah.
it it kind of was devastating for the family,
Mm,
and she fought with it and went into remission. uh Thought everything was going to be good. She was you know stronger, was back almost back to normal. uh then then she ended up it ended up come back. uh and then
mm,
my dad was with her all the time. And then my dad ended up you know getting sick. I guess you can, however you want to word it, but you could tell he just wasn't right.
yeah.
His health was bad, and ended up he was going through heart failure,
Mm,
and
wow.
he wouldn't leave my mom. he stayed at home, and it got to the point where he just would, sit or lay on the couch, and
Mm,
and it's like, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. I said, well, you gotta go, and you need to go to the hospital.
totally. Yeah.
And I called the ambulance, come and got him. He ended up in the hospital for quite a while, or for a while, and we're not, it wasn't real long. He had a stent and everything, but he was in there for
Oh, sure.
I think it was a couple weeks, maybe, or a week, or 8 days or something like that. Um, Come home, he was a lot better, stronger. Still worked. Went to work. When we had folks that sat with mom, um, and then my mom passed away, and I was a truck driver, and I come off the road and decided I was going to stay home, and stay around here and help with my dad. And he's like, well, you come work with me. So I went to work with my dad. We worked together for 2 years, and his health started to deteriorate again.
Mm,
And I asked him, I said, Dad, when's enough going to be enough?
yeah.
You're 70
Sure.
years old.
Oh, wow.
And then one day he
Man,
just looked at me. He's like, okay, today's it.
this
So he
is it. Yeah.
decided he's going to retire.
Wow.
So we, I was still working around home. He was doing fairly well. And then on Father's Day 2 years ago,
Mm,
well, a little over 2 years ago, um, all of us went to the mountains and spent the weekend for Father's Day. And he, uh, he had a good time. He drove himself.
yeah.
The following week, he calls me early in the morning. He said, "Hey," he said, "I was getting out of bed, and he said I fell, and
Mm,
I can't get back up."
oh, man.
So I went to his house, and I helped him up, and I was like, "What's wrong?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "My leg just feels asleep,
Wow.
like it's numb." And I said, "Okay, let me take you to the hospital." He said, "No, no, no, no." He said, "I don't want to go." I said, "Well, if it's not better tomorrow, will you go to the hospital?" And he said, "Yeah." So I called him early the next morning, because he had trouble a couple more times during that day. So the next morning I called him. I said, "Are you ready to go to the hospital?" He's like, "Yeah." So called the rescue squad for him again.
Mm,
He ended up spending quite a bit of time in the hospital, because they found that what was going on is his carotid artery, one of them was basically gone,
oh,
and
wow.
the other one was like severely blocked, like 80 or
Mm,
98% almost. And so they determined they couldn't really do much with that. So they put him on medication to help him, and he just got tired of being in the hospital. He didn't want to stay there. He's actually signed his own self out against medical advice.
wow.
Uh, Went home. We took care of him at home. Then I forget how long he was home, but he ended up had to go back, because it got to the point where if he tried to get up, he would pass, like, fall, and
Oh,
so
man.
we took him back. He was in there for a couple more days, and they just basically said there's nothing that we can do.
Mm,
So he went home. They sent him home on hospice, with hospice care. And I I was my aunt would help me a lot. His sister, me and my brothers and my cousin, we all took and but me and my brothers we were there most, nighttime. We was there most all the time. I was there quite a bit, because I actually took time off work. And he got to the point where he was immobile. He was in
mm,
a wheelchair, and then he couldn't even sit in a wheelchair. He was in a hospital bed. He was bedridden. And so I'll just fast forward a little bit, and to the 12th of August 2 years ago,
okay.
he he I was staying with him and my brother. There's three brothers. My middle brother was with me that night, and he was sleeping on the couch. I was sleeping on the mattress on the floor in the dining room. Well, on about 2:30 or so in the morning,
Oh, wow.
on the 13th
Mm-hmm.
of August, my dad was having, you know, issues. He couldn't. He was panicking, and I was the one appointed by hospice to administer his morphine and his Ativan to help his
Mm-hmm.
pain and calm him down. And so I did that, and I remember, he calmed down pretty quickly. and I went back and I laid down on the air mattress, and I guess dozed off pretty quick. I because I started dreaming that my well, now he's 11, but at the time, he's 8 and close or pushing 9, and I had started dreaming that he was there beside the bed, the air mattress, standing. And I remember in my dream, or whatever you want to call it, why are you there? Why are you here? How'd you get here? Who brought you here? Asking him questions.
Mm.
And I guess I still had enough consciousness, even though I was, you know, about me, that he shouldn't be here. So I
Yeah.
woke up. And when I did, that's when I seen this thing standing beside the bed.
Wow.
It was a figure, um, that I can describe as almost looking blackish gray, like static looking, like you would see like on an old TV screen when old TV used to go out.
Yep.
It
Yep.
was, but maybe not as bright. Uh, it had these long arms,
Mm.
like long bony your hands looking, skinny like legs, these bulky feet,
Mm.
and the head. I can remember that I seen the head, and it had like hollow socket almost where the eyes
Wow.
were,
Yeah.
and the other thing I noticed, there was wings above its shoulders, or at least looked
Mm.
like tips of wings. And I'm stunned, and I know I looked at it probably for 5 or so seconds, 10 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to say floated, but I don't know if that's what it really did. But it went over top of my feet and into my mom and dad's bedroom, because my dad would never sleep in that room again after my mom passed away.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
went into that room, and the weirdest thing is, I went back. I fell asleep. I went right back to sleep, and well, we got up that or later that morning on the 13th. Uh, my brother, the middle brother, was there. I told him, I said, I can't remember if he had to go to work or what it was, but he had to go. And I said, well, you just go. And, later on, my younger brother would be there and he'd stay.
Mm.
So that's what happened. They switched out places. I stayed again. Well, the night of the 13th and the 14th, Dad he didn't have any issues. He didn't panic. He didn't have a hard time breathing. I didn't have to give him medicine or anything. And I was like, well, this is our okay. He's not suffering, I guess, or whatnot. So we got up, and I told my brother, I said, you go home, because he works 6 days a week. I
Mm.
said, go home, spend time with your little girl. Get something to eat, take a shower. Then you come back later, and I'll come home. I'll go. And he said, okay, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. Well, he left. A little while, not too long after he left, hospice calls me and said, hey, we're on our
Mm.
way. We're coming
Yeah.
over. We're going to check, do our check. And I'm like, okay. I said, can you get here as quick as you can? I said, because he's not doing very well.
Oh.
And I was in like there's outside the living room, there's a little hallway that led into the kitchen. That's where I was standing. I hung up the phone and walked back around, and I could see that he was uncomfortable. He was gasping for air,
Oh boy. Yeah.
and I knew, they told me that was one of the first signs to start looking for, that, or one of
Mm.
the signs. So, in his hospital bed, he had to be set up a little, in an incline to help breathe. And I went over, because he was like leaning over. I went over and I helped him lay flat on the bed, let it down a little bit, and I grabbed it, I held his hand, and he passed away.
Wow.
That was it.
Mm. Wow. I appreciate you sharing that part of your family history with us. That means a lot. Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if I had been in your situation where seeing that figure,
Yeah.
and then to have that coupled with a passing of a family member. I mean, that it's if you want to, um, Les shares that account as well in the Mothman Legacy documentary from Small Town Monsters. But thank you, Les, for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Um,
In the movie, it's a little broken up a little bit because that was just like a few months after, and
Uh,
I broke down a few times. So
Understandably so. Yeah, I had no idea it was that close proximity.
yeah,
Wow. Mm.
yeah.
You've alluded to research through this interview, the research that you do. Do you have any advice for listeners that are just getting into um, cryptozoology? They want to be the ones that find the next Polk Gap monster. What is some research advice to these newer researchers?
Listen to what people want to tell you.
Mm,
Uh, keep track of what they tell you. Go out if you have to, and look into what they tell you, even if it's in different areas. Then eventually you'll start to notice that there might be similarities between
I love that.
stories.
Yeah.
Uh, so that'll help you kind of weed out some of the stories that may not be, you know, true, or on the up and up. And you can, if you kind of put some of those stories together, you can kind of see them synchronicity, or
Mm,
coincidence, or not coincidence, but correlations between them, and that helps me kind of determine what I feel may be the best ones to look into.
that's some solid advice. Do you have any let's say kind of tag teams with that question regarding cryptozoology or even West Virginia cryptozoology? Do you have any books that you recommend or that you always find yourself going back to on your bookshelf?
Um, I read a lot of local author stuff, the
Okay.
ghost stories. As far as like lore and stuff, like Ruth Ann Muzak, and there's a local that has been around. Her stories have been around for years and years that I grew up with. Uh, but if I find something local, I usually try to pick it up. Um, because mainly I focus here in West Virginia. I do have, like Grover Crance's book and stuff like that. But
Oh, nice. Yeah.
yeah, but
Cool.
mostly things that I delve into, I usually try to stick to the West Virginia subject.
And some of that regional stuff, like um, if you see it once, that might be the only time you see it. So you
Yeah,
gotta pick it up. Like some of those books are extremely rare from what I've seen. Um, yeah, it might not be a thing you could get on Amazon for sure.
yeah. That Americana history book, I come across it at the library, and like, I really like this book, and I talked to the library, and they're like, yeah, we sorry about that. We only have one copy of it, or two copies of it. One's in the genealogy department, one's in the library. So I
Hmm.
was like, well, I'm gonna. They said it's a pretty valuable book. It's a resource book, and like, okay, well, I figured, oh, it's not too bad. So I started looking into buying one,
Yeah.
and the one I have is actually a second printing, and even it is expensive.
Wow.
I found them online, and the cheapest one I found was between like $800-900.
Oh, I totally believe it. Yeah. Books
So
are
I
nuts.
so I told my wife, I'm like, I'll find that book somewhere, because my second passion before other than paranormal stuff is I love antique stuff. I love going to
Oh,
flea
cool.
market. I love
Okay.
flea market
Oh,
stuff.
dude. Me
So I
too,
went.
man. Yeah.
I walked into a I guess you'd call it antique store in downtown Fairmont,
Okay.
and I'm walking around, and I'm just looking around, and I see the book in the
No
case,
way.
and I'm like, oh man, how much is this book? And I had them take it out of the case, and they said $75. So I bought.
Oh,
I still had the receipt. I,
you're like just throwing money at him.
I was
Take
like,
it.
yeah,
Take
here,
it.
I'll take it. So, and then I found out it was actually a buddy of mine. And I don't know, my chair just broke. It's actually a buddy of mine
Yeah.
that it was his vendor
Oh,
spot.
no
Yeah,
way.
I
Oh,
like.
that's funny.
I talked to him later that day. I was like, man, I said I was just in there. He said, and I said I bought a book. He said, which one? I said, now long ago. He said that was mine. I was like, well, you just made $75 off of me, man.
Yeah. That's awesome. Man, what a deal for you. You didn't have to pay 8 to 900 bucks though.
Yeah.
That's solid. Yeah, dude, I used to be I still like going thrifting, but I used to be big into thrifting, and, like, when you find a deal like that or, like,
Mhm.
something you've been looking for, oh my goodness, it's just you can't get that feeling any other, well, you probably get I think you get it by finding the whatever.
Yeah.
Let's keep going, it's live. Alright, so I've got a few people in the chat, and they are wanting to hear, we got some UFO questions, so here we go.
Okay.
Mothman46 says, "Hey Jeremiah, ask Les about those lights he saw racing around the sods. And do you mind clarifying for non-West Virginia people what are the sods, just so
Uh,
that they're on the same wavelength?"
It's Dolly Sods. It's this Dolly Sods Wilderness area. It's actually one of the highest points in West Virginia, but it's
Okay.
more of it's the elevation goes from 3,000 some feet up to like low 4,000, I think it is,
Mm.
but it's more of a plateau. A lot of people call it the Little Canada of West Virginia.
Oh, weird.
There's blueberry glades, marshes, creeks, and cliffs and whatnot. But it's also the spot where a lot of people hike and camp there, but a lot of people go just to stargaze because
Mm,
there's no light pollution. It's just wide open, just wide open sky. So I think what he's talking about is what I talk about in dark skies is I would like other folks. I just go up there to look at the sky. I drove up there
okay.
and was there, and I have an old town and country van that I travel in, and I got an air mattress in
That
the
is
back.
so awesome, Les.
So I got this air mattress set up in the back. I got this totes in the back where I have my stove, my cooking stove, my
Oh, love it.
utensils, and all kind of stuff. If I want to camp in the van, I can. If I want to go hiking, I can do that. So I was there in the van and I was stargazing and I got to the point where I was like, hey, I'm gonna lay down. So I got climbed in the van and I was looking out the passenger side window and I see like this orange light coming across the sky and
Wow.
it'd go and it'd blink and then it'd go out, then it'd come back and it got so far and then it shot or as it come across the horizon like or in my view, it shot almost in reverse but in an angle downward
Oh, man.
and then started to go back across again and eventually just disappeared. So I that's the only time that I can say that I've seen something that maybe somehow UFO related.
That's wild. That's a good story. Gabe also he said, Les, do you mind to share your UFO encounter? And that's what you just shared, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So there are a few people wanting to hear that. But yeah, that's a good story. And that is in the Dark Skies
yeah.
documentary from Small Town Monsters. So definitely check that out. Have you so you've done a lot of um researching, hiking. Has there ever been a time when you have been genuinely freaked out when you've been out looking for something?
Um, the only time that it wasn't at night. I mean, I've been in the woods by myself at night. I've
Okay.
slept in hammocks by myself at night. And
Mhm.
I've never had really anything that has scared me then. But there was a time here last year, I think it was. Um, a buddy of mine wanted me to come with him to an area outside of Elkins, West Virginia. There's an area there that he said, and there's been a lot of sightings of Bigfoot in this area, or because he collects a lot of accounts from that area because that's his local area.
Sure.
So we stayed on this knob they call it. It's called Bickle's Knob, and or Bickle, not Bickles, Bickle Knob, and we stayed there or went up and hung out for a while and done the typical thing. He likes to do calls and stuff like that, and I scratched around the ground and put like what other people do it too, I guess. Print traps. Where it's the
Mm.
ground softer, something steps in it, you'll know it. So I did that and stuff. Well, it got late, and he's like, "Man, I'm just gonna go home." And I was like, "Well, I'm gonna crash here in the van." And he goes home. I had I had nothing happen. No, nothing good. Nothing went on. Didn't hear anything. Got up the next morning and looked around. Didn't see anything. Didn't see any prints or anything. And I was like, well, this is not going too good here, so I'll just move on. I moved to another area where he was telling me about, and I was doing a YouTube video and stuff as well.
Okay.
And I pulled into this little forestry road, and I was doing a video, and I messed up a couple times on like this intro, the part I was doing. And the third time I started, I heard a knocking noise. It it's in the video. It sounds like a woodpecker to me. It could be a woodpecker. It didn't have that. It was like almost like it had a um, different cadence, like
Okay. Yep.
just different. And it sounded like wood on wood instead of like a woodpecker, but it could have been.
Hmm.
But it just caught me off guard. Like, man, that just sounds off. So I decided to go look into it a little bit. I went back to my van. I got my backpack. I got my gun put on me, and started walking. And in the video, if you watch the video, you'll see a part where I'll say, I don't know what that was. What I don't say is I heard something walking like
Oh
around
man.
behind me,
Okay.
but I can see a decent distance, but I didn't see anything. So I kind of passed it off in my mind. It was a squirrel running or something, or something. And I walked up the forest road, clear the top of the ridge, and come back down. I didn't find, I was looking in where the springs were running across the stream, looking for prints. Didn't find anything, but I found boot prints and deer prints, and people had hiked up and down through there.
Sure.
I get back to the van, and I go around the back, go to hit the button to open a hatch, and that's when I notice handprints. These handprints on one's on the top, like up
No
over
way.
on top of the tailgate, and one's down on the window. And the van had a bunch of dust on it, so there wasn't no
Oh
handprints
man.
there to start with. And what it looked like where the handprint was on the top, like here, this
Mm-hmm.
part here,
Mm-hmm.
if something had hair, looked like it had rubbed the window.
No way.
And then down at the left hand corner, it looked like if something's like belly or something had touched there, like almost like
Oh my
it leaned in,
goodness.
looked in my van.
Wow.
I can't say what it was. I don't. I'm not going to say it's Bigfoot, but
Right.
it's either something like that or something. Because, like I said, I heard this something. Now I feel like it was something walking, or some weirdo was around my van.
Either way, that's
Yeah,
gonna make you take notice, man.
yeah. So
Oof.
that's probably one of the most unnerving. That's probably the most unnerving thing I've had happen.
Yeah, I'd be right there with you. Like, no thanks. We got a few people that are psyched for. Was it you say Elkins?
Mm-hmm.
So we got Mothman 46 at Elkins Ramp Festival. Jeremiah needs to go. I need to go to West Virginia. Period. I haven't really looked at that, been in that state from the viewpoint of someone into cryptozoology. So someday I'm getting out there with the family. Nancy DS67 says my family is from Elkins. Awesome.
Nice.
That's cool. Thanks for hanging out. Um, a little side note to those watching: if you have any uh, last minute questions for Les, right now is a good time to put those in. I've got a few more I'm going to kind of close out the interview with, but if you have any more you want to ask him, now is the time to do it. So, we like talking about Bigfoot on here. If let's say someone's to ask you, Les, so what? How do you explain what is Bigfoot in your thinking?
I have no idea.
No idea. All right, that's
Yeah.
solid.
I
Fair
really
enough.
don't. I really don't know.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different things that you have to that needs to be looked at. I I mean, I feel that there's something there. I tell people I'm a skeptic believer,
Okay.
basically, because my belief comes from when I've talked to folks that I can tell that are pretty much their story that they're putting forward. You could tell that they've seen something, or they feel that they've seen something. Then you have, the evidence that could be that's out there. But then I have questions that I have.
Mm.
I think is being trying to be a logical thinker, like how how something that's supposed to be this big, especially like in West Virginia, something that's supposed to be 700-800 pounds.
Yeah,
How are we not finding it? It because
exactly.
if there's a troop or whatever you want to call them here, some people believe. I mean, I've even heard somebody say there's 50,000 of them in the United States.
I've heard that as well. Yep. Yep.
That to me, that's just can't be plausible because that would put over 1,000 of these things in a possibility of 1,000 of these things in each state.
And we cannot say Hawaii because
Yeah,
if it
yeah.
was,
Or even though just over a
it's
thousand, just in the
wild. Yeah, it's
just in the
wild.
lower 48.
Yeah.
If that's so, you're still going to see there's going to be a huge footprint of some sort from these creatures.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not in every state, then you got those numbers condensing even more. Just say they're in half that number. If that number is that high,
Right.
half of the states, it just gets worse and worse. And if you got, I mean, if even in West Virginia, with the national forest being almost a million acres here, if there's 1,000 of those things in West Virginia, and they're 700-800 pounds and 4 feet wide, like
Yeah,
some people talk about, it's going to leave one hell of a game trail somewhere.
that's a good point. Yeah.
That not only that, it's going to decimate some of the fauna. It's going to decimate,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a lot of stuff. And so I don't feel, in my opinion, I don't feel that if they do exist, there's not as many as some people believe. I mean, that's my opinion.
Interesting.
Um,
Interesting.
but I also don't believe that they're all giants of what
Mm.
you know. Because I've heard stories of some that's only 5-6 feet tall, and
Sure.
not the 7 and
Yep.
8. So, and I think as far as that, it may have to do with regional things.
Mm-hmm.
The size it may change. But yeah, I, I I really don't know what they are. I want in my heart to believe that this is an unidentified or um, discovered ape of some sort,
Sure.
or primate of some
Yep.
sort.
Yep.
Um, but it also you have the weird stuff that people tell you,
I know there's some really weird stories out there, right? Yeah.
and there are people that won't listen to those. So,
Yep.
and for me, I have to, and the reason I have to is because you have to separate that. If you can't separate that, you can't come to a conclusion of what is and what's not. And some of these strange things, I believe, is just something completely different. It may have those
That's an interesting
characteristics.
thought. Yeah.
It may have characteristics of what people will think of Bigfoot, and they maybe that's the only thing that person, because Bigfoot has become pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the only thing they can relate it to. So,
Mm.
but maybe some of this stuff is just a completely different subject. Um, for instance, I've told this several times and it's one of them that I go back to. I talked to a gentleman that was the truck driver in near Fayette County, West Virginia, down in that
Yeah.
area, and he told me that he was either going or coming from a dairy that he was like driving for, delivering or picking. I don't remember which one it was. I think he was coming from, and he coming down this road, and there's a straightaway, and he sees this thing coming to the road, and he said the only thing I could describe it as is a huge ape, an ape-like
Mm.
man standing in the road.
Wow.
He said I stopped. I had my headlights on. He said about 75 yards away. He said I let off the brakes, and his truck starts to ease forward. As he does, this thing turns toward him, and he told me, he said it looks like it was going to go on all fours, like you hear some of them do.
Mm-hmm.
But as it did, it changed shape. It changed into a buck deer and ran into the woods.
What? No
Now,
way.
is this guy BSing me? I don't know. But then you have other stories. I mean, I've heard other stories that have strange. There's even a famous one here in West Virginia. I think John Keel wrote about it. But I also took a report where one come into the road. This guy's
Mm-hmm.
car shuts off. he could feel a vibration, like his whole car is vibrating. And there was an
Okay.
instance in like a residential area, the street light goes off.
Oh.
It, but he could still see this thing in the road, and it goes across the road. As it goes off the other side, there's like a wood line there. He says it doesn't walk into the woods. It just basically vanishes into thin air at that wood line. And his,
I've heard that in other stories as well.
yeah.
Totally. Oh
So,
man.
yeah. So that's kind of stuff that I'm like, makes me wonder what in the world,
Oof.
what are we dealing with? When you have like the patty and stuff like that, and that, to me, that's an animal. It's definitely
Mm.
an animal. But
Mm-hmm.
when you have weird, strange stuff, I think it's something completely different.
Yeah, and the one huge thing to take away from that is not to get so wrapped up in what you think is true that you throw someone else's story out. You just because you think it's like a physical creature, an ape, you're not throwing away. Don't throw away the other
Yeah.
stories. I mean, who are you to say that's not true or not? We got some questions here.
But the
Oh,
reason
go
I
ahead. Yeah, yeah.
the reason I don't throw that away is because one is, I don't even like to call myself a researcher. I call me pretty
Mm.
much a collector is more what I
Oh, okay. I like that. Yeah.
because I collect the stories, and I try to preserve them, and I
Mm.
think, but if you throw those away, you can't come back to them when you have something else like that come up and compare.
Mm.
So then you don't have that data and baseline, or whatever you want to call it, to start formulating something else. Hey, this is something completely different. We got 3 or 4 stories from this area that has that same feel to them, same flavor to them. You just can't throw that away.
Mhm.
So that's why I don't.
I love that. I love that. It's almost like you're collecting the folklore of the state, the tales, which is really cool. Gabe says, "Question for Jeremiah: Have I heard of Vegetable Man? You know what I have, and you know where I heard it from? This book right here. Go check it out. That's a crazy the Vegetable Man. I think is definitely not one of the more popular ones. Like it's not like the Mothman, but it's still a crazy cryptid tale for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for bringing that up, Gabe. Um, Facebook, sorry. So StreamYard has a thing where if you don't click the link and agree that StreamYard can see your stuff. So sorry, I'm not sure who this user is, but question: Are you going to have Les again on your show soon, Jeremiah? I could see definitely a follow up interview in the future. If you watch Les's YouTube channel, he is out there getting new stories all the time. But Bigfoot Society also has a list a mile long of future interviews. But I'd say, Les, we're gonna have to definitely chat again in
All
the
right.
future for sure. Mothman 46 has a few things. He says, I don't think Bigfoot's as stocky as it presented to be. I believe it's long and lanky. It's a climber. So kind of like the wood devils of Coos County in Upper
Hmm.
New Hampshire. It's kind of hiding behind the trees. The wood devils, kind of interesting there.
I
And
mean,
you,
I mean that's
yeah,
another thing. I mean, if they are climbers, which you hear stories,
you do,
you
yeah.
hear people say that they see these things in trees, or they have heard the thumps coming out of the tree. Something jumps to the ground, and that is, to me, that would be something that's almost, especially some of the trees that we have, some of the bigger trees. But you hear where the stories that the trees aren't that big, and if you have a 800-pound animal in that tree, it's going to cause them damage. It's going to break things. It's going to, limbs, or it's going to, you know, it's definitely going to cause damage. So that's what I said. I don't think they're as big as what all of them are as big as what, you know, they're made out to be. I mean, I think that
Yeah,
that's just become a stereotype that when you talk Bigfoot, it's 7, 8, 9 feet tall. I just don't think
I
it.
think
I
you're
don't.
right.
I don't
Yep.
think they are.
Um, got a clarification message real quick. Our friend Mark Mercell, Mr. Ape Canyon, was the one who asked if you're gonna have Les again on the show. So thanks for asking that, Mark. Uh, Mothman46 also asks, Les, do you have any thoughts on Dogman? That's a really good question.
They scared the living daylights out of me.
Yeah, for me too.
Yeah,
I'm like, I really hope that one's not real because they're
yeah,
never, you don't hear any Dogman stories where like he's having a good day or like
yeah.
he's high-fiving people. Like, doesn't happen, you know?
And I don't know why. I mean, that's a general reaction for most people, and I feel that it has something to do with DNA memory. But
Mm.
some scientists say that our DNA memory or whatever you want to, I forget what it's actually called, really doesn't go back that far to where.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I feel that's an instinctive fear from
Yeah.
so maybe we somewhere in our past we've dealt with something like that
Crazy to
before.
think about.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And it's like, oh man, yeah. Can you imagine though if that was just a part of history we didn't know about and it's like
yeah.
humans versus Dogman? No thanks, man. Mothman46 also says, "Hey, I'd like to thank Les for this interview. Great show, guys. Thank you for sticking around, buddy." And Gabe has a question. Les, what's your favorite Mothman book? Hey, that's pretty niche question there.
Um, my buddy Mike's Mothman teaches the ABCs.
Oh, for sure. It's so
Yeah,
good. Dude,
yeah,
it's one of my kids' favorite books, like
yeah,
legit. And the thing about it is in the back, it actually has like I love how it goes into each cryptid so that when they get a little older, you can still read it type deal. Such a
yeah,
good book.
yeah.
Pick up
I
Mothman. Is it Mothman Learns the ABCs, I think.
Mothman
It's actually,
teaches ABCs or
yeah.
something. Yeah. I
But
mean that's probably not what he wanted to hear, but it's my buddy's book. I enjoyed it. My son loves it, so
so
yes,
good.
I really
So
like it.
good. Let's do one last question here. We'll do a wrap-up question. Um What advice would you give to the person who's just getting into cryptozoology and the weird and UFOs and things of that nature?
Do your research.
Mm,
Look look into possible historical accounts. See if there's
mhm.
anything related to like what you're dealing with, what maybe you're looking into now. And again, talk to folks, talk to the people that want to talk to you, and see what they have to offer, and try to build that database that you can go back to.
I love that. That's really good advice, and it seems basic, but it is the smartest advice that you will hear. And write it down or record it
Right.
because 10 years down the road, you will forget it or less, depending on how old you are. I know for me, it'll be a year, but oh, is that your research notebook?
That's just the Bigfoot sightings.
Bigfoot sightings. For West Virginia only?
Hmm.
And it's probably not, none of that is online.
Yeah, most of those you can find them up on my
Oh, okay. Okay.
unless they didn't want me to
Yeah.
publish it.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah, most of them would be
I love
you
that.
have to search through my Facebook page, but yeah, they're on there.
Our friend Gabe says, before you go, I want to say great interview. Take care, guys, and have a great night. Thank you for hanging out, Gabe. Les,
See you, Gabe.
before you do go, remind our listeners that are here in the podcast, all that good stuff, how they can keep up to date with what you're doing and what they should what things you put out, things of that nature.
You can always follow my page. It's WV Cryptids and Strange Encounters
Hmm.
on Facebook. That's basically all I have. I don't do Instagram. I don't do any of that other stuff. Uh, Same way with it. Same title on the YouTube channel. You can watch them. I mean, people tell me that they enjoy them, but I just do. I don't try to put any frills or anything. I just go out and what I do, I record
That's good
and
stuff.
just straight up. I just do it real. I guess I don't put any flashy stuff on it. If you have an experience in West Virginia, you can reach out to me on Facebook page, or you can email me at wvcase304 at yahoo.com.
Nice,
And
nice.
and if you're interested in buying the book, you can find that right now. You can get it on Amazon, but if you want to message me or Mark and want one signed, we will be buying some, ordering more. I'm just out now. I don't know. I don't think Mark has any at this moment either. But yeah, if we can always make arrangements, when we get some in.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, definitely. And it doesn't cost anything to subscribe to YouTube. So subscribe to his YouTube and also this one too. But a plug for your YouTube, we didn't even talk about the time that you uh, researched into the sighting of a potential prehistoric creature. We're not even going to get into that. You have to go to Les's YouTube to watch that amazing video. And definitely we'll be having you back on hopefully in the future to talk about your future exploits. But thank you so much, Les, for coming on, and have a great night, all.
Well, thank you for having me, and everybody have a good night.